Welcome back in our series Inside Renewable Fuels. You'll remember from our 2 previous episodes that we firstly touched on what is a life cycle approach, and then we also looked into what are zero-emission vehicles. Do these really exist? Let us now look at an online tool, a car CO2 comparator developed by Concawe, to see what is the reality of the numbers. Come with me. This online tool compares 3 different powertrains. Before we go into details, every number, every source, every data is mentioned. Click on those eyes, which mean information, and you will be able to have all the explanation around it. The tool gives you default values. These can all be changed. You have a number of options for the batteries. You have a number for the battery production. You have a number of options for the charging intervals and for the options for the fuels. Just change them as you want. It's your choice. We have gone for the same battery size for the 2 hybrid options, a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid, and we have decided to go for a 60 kWh for the battery electric, which is an affordable vehicle versus range, which are usually much more expensive. We then have for the battery production a default value is 120. You can disagree, believe it's higher, or you can disagree and think this is now becoming lower. So let's stick to 70, which is likely to be a number for Europe in the short term. We also have chosen 150,000 kilometers total lifetime mileage for the vehicle. You have other options, you can decide. In terms of recharge interval, this is important for the plug-in hybrid. The more you charge a car, the more you use the battery. A daily recharge means a daily use of the battery. We thus use 1. In terms of mileage, we take the average. In terms of climate, we are in a temperate country here in Brussels. Let's stick to those default options. Now comes the interesting part, the energy. And we start with the electricity. We have a number of 335 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. That is the European average, official numbers from the European Commission for 2019. Have they changed? We are 4 years later? Slightly. Let's go now individually for countries. In Belgium today, you would have something around 120, 150 on a life cycle. We will go for 150 for the life cycle, which is below the official number for 2019. And then we will look into the fuel options that we will take. We will take a bio option, HVO. We will take an e-diesel and an e-gasoline, both synthetic fuels. Go back to our previous videos to know more about those fuel options. What are the results here? We can see that we have a performance for the battery electric vehicle of 98 grams of CO2 per kilometer. For the plug-in hybrid, 77 for the diesel, 76 for the gasoline, and 94 for the bio-based HVO. Finally, the hybrid vehicle performs best because it doesn't depend on the electricity from the grid, and it is 67 for the e-diesel, 63 for the e-gasoline, and 105 for the HVO. The production of the HVO requires a little bit more energy. Let's now go to another country which has a higher electricity CO2 intensity, and that is, for instance, Germany, where we do have coal. It's not the only country in Europe, but it will show you some very interesting elements. You cannot ignore the role of the energy in the CO2 performance of a vehicle. Germany today is around 450 grams of CO2 for the electricity production. What does this tell me? Well, an EV in Germany is 171 grams of CO2. If we look into the plug-in hybrid, we're at 132 for the diesel, 131 for the gasoline, and 149 for the HVO. Finally, the hybrid vehicle, not using the electricity from the grid, keeps the same numbers, whatever the intensity of the electricity. 67, 63, 105. What does this tell me? Hybrid vehicles with a carbon-intense electricity grid are the best option. The lowest numbers to reduce the intensity of transport. The EV is extremely dependent on the energy produced, and the hybrid, little bit better than the EV, but still dependent. Let's now go into the ideal world. We are at the lowest number for our battery production, 30 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour, and we are going to almost zero because the zero doesn't exist. I repeat that. Let's go to 15. What does it tell me now? 47 grams of CO2 for the electric vehicle. So zero emission? No way. We go to the plug-in hybrid, 49 grams for e-diesel, 47 for e-gasoline, and 65 for the HVO. And here, given that we have a decarbonated grid, the hybrid vehicle will perform a little bit less Good, as the two others, 64 for e-diesel, 60 for e-gasoline, and 102 for the HVO. So basically, all those technologies can collectively contribute to our overall objective of reducing emissions in transport. Zero emission don't exist. We do have, and we have to take those in consideration, we do have emissions at every stage of the use of the vehicle, from its production until its recycling. This raises the question of the way emissions are measured for vehicles at the tailpipe only. We should consider all emissions at every stage of the vehicle. Stay tuned for the next episode.